Crude is trading at $101 a barrel, Tapis crude's at $114 a barrel, and gold this morning's worth $1,303 an ounce. The Australian dollar's buying 92.6 US cents, 67 euro cents, and 55 pence sterling.
For more on finance, we're joined by Rob North, Executive Director at Bourse Communications. Rob, good morning.
Good morning.
Let's talk about the IMF downgrading the economic growth prospects for Australia.
Yes,
because this is a little bit alarming.
It sort of comes at a bit of an interesting time, doesn't it, with all the discussion about the budget. And I suppose the economy in Australia is still very fragile. We know that. We still have a high unemployment rate, even though it's dropped a bit to 5.8%. But the IMF came out and downgraded the growth prospects, which is GDP prospects for Australia for 2014 from 2.8 to 2.6 for this year, and then from 2.9 to 2.7 for next year. And I think a lot of that's got to do with the fact that there is an expectation that China growth will slow somewhat, and therefore, you know, the emphasis will be back on the non-mining sector of the economy in Australia. And I mean, the jury's still a bit out as to, you know, how that will pan out over the next few years without the enormous demand from China, although China's growth is still expected to be high and in the 7% range. And we've still seen, you know, some really interesting figures on agriculture in particular, with the demand for beef out of Australia into China over the last few weeks, which showed a 40% increase. So we seem to get a few mixed messages there, but I think the IMF's being fairly cautious there.
Let's look at the share market. There could be a lot of extra activity in the coming months with merger and acquisition deals potentially heating up.
Absolutely, and I think this will be a bit of a wild card. I mean, we've seen that bid for Goodman Fielder, and I mean, there's a lot of opportunism happening here where, you know, the current bid is at 65 cents and the shares are up 15% yesterday, but the valuation of the companies that they're putting on, it's about 1.2 billion. The reality is the company's probably worth about 1.8. So I think there's going to be a bit of argy-bargy going, but I must say it's very nice for people to have these sort of companies sitting in their portfolios. It's been there for 5 years or so, going nowhere, and all of a sudden you wake up one morning and find your shares are up 15%, which is quite interesting.
Not a bad wake-up present, is it?
Not a bad wake-up call. The other thing that's really interesting is, and we have seen that the private equity groups have been very busy over the last 5 years too, acquiring businesses, taking them off the ASX and then putting them back on. But interestingly enough, they've been generally putting them back on at a massive valuation. And one that we will see happen on the 23rd of May will be Spotless, and everyone remembers Spotless, and it was a big company, started in the 40s, listed in the 60s, was sold for only $712 million. And then will relist with a valuation of $2 billion. So I suppose the thing is, I'll be looking very closely at the prospectus to see what is left in that company, because, you know, to buy it for $712 million and then relist it for a valuation of $2 billion and offer $1 billion to the market, someone's got to have made a bit of money out of it. And I'm hoping it's going to be the shareholders that might buy the shares at $1.85. You know, providing, you know, the company can generate some decent earnings over the next few years.
What can we expect from the market in the
We can expect the market probably today to go up about 20 or 30 points off the back of Wall Street. I think there's a bit of sort of certainty coming into it over the fact that we've got some sanctions with Russia over the Ukraine position, so that gave a bit of certainty to the US market and gave it a bit of a boost. You know, after Friday's drop of 140 points, it was good to see it up 82 last night.
Rod, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank
Rod.
you. All right, be prepared to have your heart broken this morning if you're eligible and on the market, because one of those you might have been targeting is apparently not on the market anymore. Mr. George Clooney has been pinned